What if the hardest goodbye in your life wasn't a punishment, but the beginning of a future you couldn't yet imagine? Somewhere tonight, in a quiet room you might not even notice, a door is closing. Not with a slam, not with thunder, not with the drama you were told to expect. It closes the way silence falls over a house after everyone has finally gone to sleep. Softly, almost politely, as if it doesn't want to wake you. You won't hear it happen, you'll only feel it. A strange stillness where something used to be. A missing weight you can't quite name. And somewhere underneath the noise of your ordinary day, a single question will rise to the surface, uninvited, the way old memories do at 4 in the morning. Why does this feel like an ending and a beginning at the exact same time? Stay with me, because this is where the story becomes personal. Because what you're about to hear isn't really about the universe, it's about you. It's about the version of you that's been quietly trying to leave for a long time, waiting for permission you never gave. Tonight, that permission might finally arrive, not as lightning, not as a sign in the sky, but as a feeling, a pull. A door swinging shut behind you while another one, somewhere in the dark ahead, begins to open just wide enough for you to see the outline of light. You have felt this before. Everyone has. The moment before a breakup you already knew was coming. The silence in an office hallway right before the layoff. The last time you called someone who never called back again. In each of those moments, something in your chest already knew before your mind was ready to admit it. That is not superstition. That is not magic. That is the oldest instinct a human being carries, the part of you that senses change before you can explain it. Tonight is one of those moments, and the only real question left is whether you'll fight it or finally let it happen. But almost nobody realizes what happens next. Because the human brain was never built to let go easily. It was built to survive. And for tens of thousands of years, survival meant one simple rule. Cling to what you know, because the unknown might kill you. Your ancestors who wandered too far from the fire, who trusted too easily, who changed too quickly, many of them didn't make it. The ones who did were the cautious ones, the ones who held on. That instinct never left you. It lives in your body right now, in the tightness in your shoulders when something uncertain approaches, in the way your mind replays old conversations, searching for a version where you said the right thing and nothing had to end. Your brain isn't broken. It's ancient. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect you from a world that no longer exists. Because here is the strange, quiet truth almost nobody tells you. Uncertainty doesn't actually weigh more than reality. It only feels that way. A real ending, once it happens, has edges. You can touch it. You can grieve it, name it, walk around it. But an ending that hasn't happened yet, a maybe, a might, a possibly, has no shape at all. And the mind, desperate for control, fills that shapeless fear with every worst possible outcome it can invent. This is why waiting for bad news is often more painful than receiving it. This is why the anticipation of a goodbye can hurt more than the goodbye itself. Your imagination, in its attempt to protect you, becomes the very thing torturing you. And here's the part nobody talks about. Somewhere, right now, you are still holding a door open that already closed. Maybe it's a relationship that ended months ago, but still lives inside your phone, inside a folder of screenshots you tell yourself you'll delete tomorrow. Maybe it's a job you didn't get, a city you didn't move to, a version of your life that existed only in your imagination, but somehow still aches like a memory. Maybe it's simply who you used to be, the person you were before the world asked more of you than you thought you could give. We all carry these invisible doors. We walk through our days holding the handle of something that has already shut, refusing to accept that our hand is closing around nothing but air. And the strange cruelty of it is this: the longer we hold on, the heavier the door becomes, until eventually it isn't a door at all. It's a weight we drag behind us into every new room we enter. Picture a woman in her late 30s, standing in a kitchen that used to be shared. The coffee maker still makes 2 cups out of habit. She pours one down the sink each morning, not because she needs to, but because some rituals take longer to end than the relationships that created them. She tells herself she's moved on, but moving on and letting go are not always the same thing. One is a location, the other is a decision. Picture a young man, 22, sitting outside a university lecture hall he no longer attends, wearing a jacket from a team he no longer plays for. An injury ended one dream on a Tuesday afternoon in November, and no one prepared him for how long it takes to grieve a future that was never guaranteed in the first place. Picture an older man, 61, standing at the edge of a garden he built with someone who is no longer there to see it bloom. Every spring, the flowers return. Every spring, he wonders if that means she is still somehow present, or if their return is simply proof that time moves forward whether we're ready or not. Different lives, different ages, different heartbreaks. The same invisible door, closed, and the same hand still reaching for a handle that isn't there anymore. But the real transformation hasn't even begun. Because before anyone can walk through a new door, they have to survive the silence in between. And this silence is the part of the story we understand the least. We call it the universe going quiet. We call it feeling lost. We call it the space where nothing seems to be happening, where prayers feel unanswered, where effort feels invisible, where the future refuses to reveal itself no matter how many times we ask. But silence has never meant absence. Silence is where everything invisible is being built. Think of a forest after a wildfire. To the human eye, it looks like devastation. Blackened trunks, ash where green once stood, a landscape that seems to have lost everything. But underground, in the dark, roots are already stretching toward moisture. Seeds that needed fire to crack open are finally cracking. What looks like an ending, to anyone standing on the surface, is actually the most active, most necessary phase of the entire cycle. It simply happens where no one can see it. This is what silence does to a human life. The quiet months after a breakup, the uncertain year after a career ends, the long stretch where nothing seems to move, that isn't punishment. That's the underground work. That's the part of growth that never happens in front of an audience because it isn't meant to. And this is why holding on creates suffering, while acceptance creates freedom. Not because acceptance is easy, it rarely is, but because resistance keeps you standing at a door that has already closed, spending your only currency, time, trying to reopen something that was never meant to reopen. Acceptance doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you finally turn around and notice that there was another door behind you the entire time, one you couldn't see because your back was turned toward it. Here's the part nobody talks about. Letting go doesn't feel like peace at first. It feels like falling. It feels like walking without a map, without a plan, without the comforting lie that you know exactly what happens next. And that falling feeling is precisely why so many people turn back. They mistake the discomfort of growth for the danger of failure. They confuse the ache of change with the ache of mistake. But these two feelings, though they sit in the exact same place in your chest, are not the same at all. Think of a river reaching a cliff. From upstream, the water has no way of knowing what waits below. There is no map for a river. There is no guarantee. And yet, every single time, the river does not stop at the edge and turn back toward where it came from. It falls. It becomes something new, mist, movement, a waterfall people travel across the world just to witness. What looked, for one terrifying moment, like the end of the river, was actually the most breathtaking part of its journey. You are standing at that exact edge right now, and every part of you that fears the fall is not weak, it is human, it is ancient. It is trying to protect you the only way it knows how. But sometimes, the most protective thing you can do for yourself is fall anyway. Consider a teenage girl, 16 years old, standing in front of a mirror on the last night before she moves to a new city, a new school, a new life she never asked for. She doesn't know yet that the version of herself staring back, anxious, uncertain, terrified of being forgotten by the friends she's leaving behind, is closer to who she'll become than the girl she was 6 months ago. She thinks this is loss. She doesn't yet know it's preparation. Consider a man in his 40s, laid off after 18 years at the same company, sitting in his car in an empty parking lot because he can't yet bring himself to drive home and say the words out loud. He believes in that moment that his identity has been taken from him. He doesn't yet know that the job was never his identity. It was only ever his address. And addresses, unlike people, are always meant to change. Every single one of these stories ends the same way, not with an answer, not with certainty, but with a realization. The realization that they were never actually losing themselves. They were only losing the version of themselves that could no longer carry them forward. And here's where the story becomes personal, because you already know this feeling. You've lived a version of it, maybe more than once. Stoic philosophers, centuries ago, wrote about this exact ache using a word that still echoes today: amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not blind acceptance, not passive surrender, but a fierce, deliberate choice to work with what has already happened, instead of spending your remaining days at war with it. They understood something we keep forgetting in a world built on control, that peace was never found in getting everything you wanted. It was found in no longer needing everything to go your way. On the other side of the world, in Eastern philosophy, there's a different metaphor for the same truth: the bamboo, which survives storms not because it resists the wind, but because it bends. The rigid tree, the one that refuses to move, is often the one the storm eventually breaks. The bamboo bends low enough to nearly touch the ground, and then it rises again, unbroken, because it never fought the thing it could not control. Look at the seasons. No one grieves autumn for not being summer. No one accuses winter of failing to be spring. We accept, without question, that a tree loses its leaves not because something has gone wrong, but because something is preparing to bloom again. We extend to nature a grace we rarely extend to ourselves. Mountains do not rise overnight. They are built by pressure so slow, so invisible, that no single day could ever prove it was happening. And yet one day, someone looks up, and there is a mountain where there used to be flat land. Your own transformation is happening exactly the same way. Too slow to notice in any single moment, too real to deny when you finally look back. And that's where everything changes. Because the strongest transformations in a human life almost never happen in front of an audience. There is no ceremony for the night someone finally stops checking their ex's social media. No applause for the morning someone gets out of bed despite grief that hasn't lifted. No spotlight for the quiet decision to try again after failure, or to trust again after betrayal, or to hope again after disappointment nearly convinced them hope was dangerous. Nobody notices inner growth because inner growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in the smallest, most unremarkable moments, A decision not to reply to a message that would have reopened an old wound. A breath taken before reacting instead of after. A single morning where the weight in your chest is, for no clear reason, slightly lighter than it was the day before. You will not see your own transformation happening in real time. Nobody does. You will only recognize it in hindsight, the way you suddenly notice you no longer flinch at a memory that used to bring you to your knees. The way you realize, almost by accident, that you haven't thought about that door in weeks. But the biggest door closing tonight might not be the one you think it is. It might not be a relationship. It might not be a job, a friendship, a city, a chapter you can point to and name. The biggest door closing tonight might be an old version of yourself. The one who apologized for taking up space. The one who stayed in rooms that no longer fit. The one who mistook exhaustion for loyalty and silence for peace. That version of you served a purpose once. She got you through things you don't talk about. He carried weight nobody else could see. That version of you is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to thank, and then, gently, to release. The way you'd thank an old friend before a long goodbye, knowing the friendship mattered even though the road ahead has to be walked alone. Because here is the quiet, undeniable truth, hiding beneath everything you've heard tonight. You were never actually losing something all this time. You were shedding it. The way a season sheds its final leaves, not out of failure, but out of readiness for what comes next. The way a river lets go of the shape it held upstream, becoming something wider, something deeper, the closer it moves toward the sea. Somewhere tonight, someone is standing at a literal closed door, staring at it in the dark, wondering if they made the right decision. Leaving a marriage, walking away from a friendship, closing a business they poured a decade into. And to them, in this exact moment, here is what deserves to be said. The fact that it hurts does not mean it was wrong. Some of the most necessary decisions of a human life feel, at first, indistinguishable from mistakes. The only way to tell the difference is time, and the willingness to keep walking even when you can't yet see where the path leads. Somewhere else, someone is lying awake at 2 a.m, replaying a conversation that ended a friendship they didn't choose to lose. To them, grief for a friendship is real grief. It doesn't need a label like romantic to be worthy of your tears. Let yourself feel it fully, because the fastest way through pain has never been around it. It has always been through it. And somewhere tonight, someone is simply tired. Not sad, not broken, not in crisis, just tired, in a way that sleep doesn't seem to fix. To them, that tiredness might not be a sign that something is wrong with you. It might be a sign that something inside you is finally ready to change. And change, even good change, takes more energy than staying the same ever did. Think about the last time you watched a sunrise. Really watched it. Not the photograph, not the memory, but the actual slow unfolding of light across a dark sky. It never happens all at once. There is no single second where night becomes day. There is only a long, patient gradient. Darkness slowly losing its grip, color slowly finding its courage, until eventually, almost without your noticing the exact moment, morning is simply there. Your transformation will look the same way. There will be no single dramatic moment where the old version of you disappears and the new one arrives fully formed. There will only be a long, patient gradient. A little more peace here, a little less fear there, until one day, without being able to point to the exact second it happened, you will simply notice that morning has come. And when it does, when you finally stand on the other side of whatever door is closing tonight, you will look back and understand something that couldn't be explained to you now, no matter how many words were used to try. You will understand that the door was never punishing you. It was protecting the person you were becoming from the life you were trying to hold on to. Somewhere in the quiet of tonight, footsteps are echoing down an empty hallway. Not away from something, but toward it. Rain is falling somewhere on a rooftop, each drop landing like a small permission to finally rest. Somewhere, a light is being switched off in a room that no longer needs to stay lit. And somewhere else, a new light, small, uncertain, barely visible, is being switched on for the very first time. You are allowed to grieve the door that closed and still walk forward. You are allowed to miss what was and still want what's coming. These feelings were never opposites. They were always meant to exist together, the way autumn and the promise of spring exist together in the same falling leaf. Maybe tonight isn't about losing something. Maybe it's about finally becoming the person you were always meant to become. And perhaps the door that quietly closed behind you was never the end of your story. It was simply making room for the next chapter. So tonight, as the house goes quiet and the world outside slows to a whisper, ask yourself the only question that has ever really mattered. Not, what did I lose? But who am I becoming now that my hands are finally empty enough to hold something new?